Welcome to Crime Maze. In this video we are going to talk about 5 kidnappings in California. Before starting this video, like this video and subscribe to Crime Maze channel for future updates. Kidnapping is a terrifying experience for both the victim and the loved ones who are unsure if the abductees will ever return home. Every day, roughly 70 children are kidnapped in the United States, with over 800,000 missing persons reported each year. Some people are abducted for ransom because of family ties, while others are kidnapped by sexual predators. While the majority of abduction victims return home safely, a tiny number of them die in captivity. Even those that survive, however, are subjected to severe psychological stress and, in some cases, are unable to live their lives to their full potential. In this video, I examined 5 of California's most well-known kidnapping instances. Number 5. A 12-year-old girl is kidnapped, leading to California's 3 strikes law. During a slumber party with 2 friends in her Petaluma, California, home, Polly Klaus is kidnapped at knife point by an intruder. Despite a massive manhunt and widespread media coverage, the 12-year-old girl and her kidnapper remained missing for 2 months. Investigators eventually discovered some children's clothing in the Northern California woods, as well as a car that had become stuck in the same spot the night of the kidnapping. Richard Allen Davis, who had previous convictions for burglary, assault, and kidnapping, was identified as the driver of the car. He had been sentenced to 16 years in prison, but had been released on parole after only a few months. Following his release, the California justice system faced widespread criticism, including complaints from 3 of his previous victims who appeared on ABC's Primetime in January 1994. The FBI forensic team found only one usable piece of physical evidence at the Klaus home during the initial investigation: a partial palm print on Polly's bunk bed. When confronted with the evidence against him, Davis confessed to the crime and led detectives to Polly's burial location. The law, however, was not well crafted because it stipulated that even individuals convicted of non-violent felonies may be sentenced to life in prison. Klaus disassociated himself from the lobbying effort after learning about this component of the bill, but California voters overwhelmingly supported the ballot item regardless. Many people charged with crimes like bigamy or even stealing a slice of pizza have faced life in jail as a result of this statute. Klaus and his family have become strong campaigners for changing the legislation, but lawmakers have shied away from dealing with the problem for fear of being labeled soft on crime. Klaus has also been a vocal supporter of capital punishment. Soft on crime. He said of his child's killer, Richard Allen Davis will, hopefully, see my eyes as the last thing he sees. Number 4. 1976 Chowchilla Kidnapping. The 1976 Chowchilla kidnapping took place on July 15, 1976, in Chowchilla, California, and involved a school bus driver and 26 children aged 5 to 14. The kidnappers kept their victims in a box truck buried in a quarry in Livermore, California, with the intention of extorting a ransom. The driver and children dug themselves out and fled after nearly 16 hours underneath. Frederick Newhall Woods IV, the quarry owner's son, and 2 of his friends, brothers James and Richard Schoenfeld, were found guilty of the crime. Each was given a life sentence with the possibility of parole. Both Schoenfelds were released from prison in 2015. Woods' next parole hearing will take place in 2024, on Thursday, July 15, 1976, about 4 p.m. School bus driver Frank Edward Ed Ray was returning 26 Dairyland Elementary School students from a summer class excursion to the Chowchilla Fairgrounds swimming pool when a van blocked the road in front of the bus. Ray came to a halt in front of 3 armed men wearing nylon stockings over their faces. Ray was held at gunpoint by one of the men, while another drove the bus and the third followed in the van. The bus was hidden in the Berenda Slough, a shallow offshoot of the Chowchilla River where another van had been parked by the kidnappers. The back windows of both vans were painted black, and the interiors were strengthened with paneling. Ray and the kids were kidnapped and put into 2 vehicles at gunpoint, then driven for 11 hours to a quarry in Livermore, California. The victims were forced to crawl down a ladder into a buried moving truck that was packed with a minimal amount of food and drink, as well as several beds, in the early hours of July 16. Number 3. Kidnapping of J.C. Dugard. J.C. Dugard was abducted from her home in Myers, California, on June 10, 1991. Dugard was stolen from a roadway while walking to a school bus stop when she was 11 years old. Despite the fact that multiple people witnessed the kidnapping, the search for Dugard began almost immediately after he vanished. Dugard had been missing for over 18 years when, on August 24 and 25, 2009, a convicted sex offender, Philip Garrido, arrived on the campus of the University of California, Berkeley, accompanied by two adolescent females who were later identified as Garrido's biological kids. Garrido's parole officer ordered him to take the two girls to a parole office in Concord, California, on August 26 as a result of the trio's strange behavior. He was joined by a woman named Dugard, who was later recognized. Following Dugard's reappearance, authorities detained Philip and his wife Nancy Garrido. They pleaded guilty to kidnapping and assaulting Dugard on April 28, 2011. Dugard was held in secret tents, sheds, and lean-tos behind the Garrido's house at 1554 Walnut Avenue in Antioch, California, for 18 years, where Garrido repeatedly raped her. Dugard gave birth to two daughters during her confinement, who were 11 and 15 years old when she reappeared. Garrido was sentenced to 431 years in jail for life on June 2, 2011, and his wife, Nancy, was sentenced to 36 years in prison for life. Garrido is a person of interest in at least one other missing person investigation in the San Francisco Bay Area. Number 2. California mass kidnapping. Is it possible to recover from the trauma of being kidnapped and buried alive? For decades haven't been enough for Linda Carrello Lavandera and her classmates. 3 men kidnapped her and 25 other 4th graders off their school bus, drove them to a desolate quarry, and put them into a moving van buried 6 feet beneath. It was the country's largest mass kidnapping. The children waited for either rescue or death for 16 hours. The children sobbed helplessly. The elders attempted to console them. The odor of vomit and filth was heightened by the scorching California sun as they were all buried in a coffin. Survivors of the Chowchilla bus kidnapping claim they're experiencing the trauma 39 years later. Despite being sentenced to life without the chance of parole, Fred Woods, the last remaining kidnapper in jail, could be released by a parole board. "Just thinking about it makes me sick," Carrello Lavandera added. She stated she is coffin. Now that she is 49. Number 1. Stephen Stainer, 1972. Stephen Stainer, then 7 years old, was approached by a man who claimed to be collecting money for his church on December 4, 1972, in Merced, California. Irvin Edward Murphy, the man, was a friend of pedophile Kenneth Parnell. When Murphy asked Stainer if his mother would help, the young boy responded yes. Stainer reluctantly consented to Murphy's offer to drive the youngster to his home. Parnell was waiting in the car. And so began Stephen Stainer's 7-year nightmare. Stainer was whisked away to a cabin in Cathy's Valley, just a few hundred yards from his grandmother's house. Parnell assaulted him on the first night, and within 2 weeks of his arrest, the violent pedophile began rapping the youngster. The sexual torture continued, and Parnell gradually indoctrinated the youngster, convincing him that his parents no longer wanted him. Stainer was subsequently informed by Parnell that he was now his legal guardian, and that he must address him as dad. He even began referring to the boy as Dennis Gregory Parnell, and enrolled him in various California schools. Parnell pumped his new son with booze and gave him carte blanche. However, a befuddled Stainer did not take advantage of these possibilities to depart. Stainer began to doubt if Parnell was telling the truth about his parents as he grew older. He used to scour newspapers and newscasts for signs that they were hunting for him. Regrettably, his parents distributed leaflets to schools where he had previously attended, but no one remembered him. In February 1980, Parnell decided that Stainer was getting too old for him and kidnapped another boy called Timothy White. The 5-year-old sobbed and pleaded to be returned home. Stainer was well aware that if he didn't intervene, White would meet the same end. Stainer and White hitchhiked to a police station in Ukiah, California. 16 days later, the 2 kidnappers were apprehended by police. However, Murphy received only 2 years in prison and Parnell received only 5. Parnell was sentenced to 25 years in prison in 2004 for attempting to buy a 4-year-old boy for $500. I wish I could tell you that Stainer's story ended happily, but the poor man's fate was heartbreaking. He did not obtain treatment as a result of his ordeal, and he dropped out of school early after being taunted about being assaulted by unkind classmates. He struggled with drinking, which he used to mask the trauma he was experiencing. He persevered, and by the age of 20, he had married and had 2 children. When he was killed on September 16, 1989, when a car collided with his motorcycle, his wife, Jody, said he finally found peace. What do you think about this video? Do let us know down in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from us again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.